Hey folks, this is Kelani. Patch 8.3 will be adding a few extra features into the Heart of Azeroth system. Most important of all is the addition of new powerful essences to collect and swap around. You'll also be able to obtain a third minor essence in the next patch, so extra essences to choose from is always going to be a nice thing. There are 7 in total, 2 for the damage dealers, 2 for the healers, 2 for the tanks, and then 1 general essence which anyone can use. So everything is staying fair and even. The DPS aren't getting any special treatment here by getting 5 new essences or anything bonkers. I'll go through the DPS ones first, then the healers, then the tanks. If you want to skip around, you can find timestamps in the comments section below. Alrighty, straight to it, the DPS essences. The first one we have is called Breath of the Dying. This one is really interesting and I imagine it could see quite a lot of use. 40 yard range, 45 second cooldown, burn your target with the Bolt of Azerite, dealing fire damage. If your target has less than 20% health or more than 80% health, the cooldown is reduced by 30 seconds. If it kills an enemy, the cooldown is completely reset and the essence will deal 100% increased damage on its next use. So that major effect is very similar to the Crucible of Flame in that it's a very short cooldown on use essence that deals damage. No super weird effects, no stat increases, just straight up damage. The cool thing here is the Execute effect, but it's more than just an Execute. It's more like the Hunter effect because it's above 80% and below 20%. So for the first little stretch of any encounter, you'll have the shorter cooldown, and then also towards the end, which is usually one of the most important parts of any fight, you'll have that super short cooldown. When you get that cooldown trigger, this essence can be used every 15 seconds. That's already quite a lot of damage just from an essence, but if you have a lot of adds on any fight and you can snipe the very last hit, not only do you get to use the essence immediately after the kill, but it deals double damage as well. This could end up being a really strong essence for a whole variety of reasons, but it will shine the most on any fight with intense execute phases and fights with high priority adds that spawn quite often. This might just be a straight up replacement for the Crucible of Flame for a lot of classes. And then the minor effect takes this to the next level. Your spells and abilities have a chance to strike your target for extra fire damage and heal you for 50% of the damage dealt. If your target is below 20% health, the chance for the extra proc damage is increased by 400%. Again, similar to the Crucible of Flame but without the damage over time component, but that execute portion of the minor could be amazing. Obviously it's going to depend entirely on the actual proc rate, but with the 400% increase, I imagine it should proc quite often during the execute phase. I think at rank 3 this essence is going to be an auto-equip on any fight with a problematic or extended execute phase, whether it's taken for the major and the minor or just the minor power. It seems pretty powerful either way. Probably a good pickup for PvP pressure too if you manage to get a player to low health. It could provide that extra little push you need to finish off someone for good. Now this essence comes from the new Reputation faction in Uldum, and you'll see that all of these essences do come from very familiar sources. Let's hop on over to the other DPS essence, the Spark of Inspiration. I love the idea behind this one, but I do worry a little bit about the reception it might receive. 1.5 second cast, 1 minute cooldown. Release a wave of energy from your Heart of Azeroth, increasing the damage all party members within 15 yards deal with Azerite essences by 45% and their speed for the next 20 seconds. So this isn't necessarily a DPS essence per se, but more of a support essence. It's just that only DPS classes and specs will be able to use it. You're going to be giving everyone else a boost. Imagine using this essence in a Mythic Plus dungeon, empowering your other 2 DPS so they can unleash a souped up mega laser. If your healers take anything that can deal damage and your tanks take a damage dealing essence as well, it can benefit them too. I honestly didn't think we would ever be seeing something like this in an essence, because generally essences provide a personal benefit. The only exception is the World Vein essence because you can piggyback off of other players' shards. That gives you a decent chance to get the most out of that essence, so it's more valuable when other players are also running it. I think that's the only example we have of an essence providing a significant group benefit that we've seen so far, but this essence is pure support. You can fire this thing off to give your entire party a huge boost to their own essence damage for the next 20 seconds. It'll be interesting to see if this is worth taking from a numbers perspective, but I really like that the dev team is going in a different direction with this essence in particular. It could prove to be quite useful, or it could just be a waste of a major slot. One of the things that came to mind for me when I read this essence first was, alright, it gives everyone in 15 yards a boost, but the essence specifically mentions party members. I figured that was worth looking into because the difference between only affecting your current party group versus affecting the entire raid is huge. When I was in a raid with Nadara and she was in the same group as me, the essence gave her the same swirling effect around her head, and her damage with the laser azerite was noticeably increased. When I moved her off into another raid group, she didn't get the swirly, the buff of the essence, or the extra damage on her laser. So for right now on the PTR, this essence does only affect party members. You can still use it in raids, but you'll only ever buff yourself and 4 other people. The good news is that you could tailor the groups that use this essence purposefully, so you always know who would be getting the buff and work around it that way. I assume the bonus damage will also apply to any minor essence you have, so this isn't just for boosting the damage of your major essences like the laser or rock boys, crucible of flame, or anything else that deals direct damage, but it could also boost your crucible of flame minor damage over time, your purification protocol AoE passive damage, or the execute bonus from the breath of the undying essence that we just looked at. This could be a significant damage increase for a few players in a raid to run it, so I'm excited to see how the numbers play out. For the minor effect, your spells and abilities have a chance to increase your and 2 other allies' haste and reduce the cooldown of your and 2 other allies' currently slotted major essence by 1 second. 1 second might not sound like a lot, but again, it's going to depend on the proc rate. If you can shave 20 seconds off a 1 minute cooldown, that's pretty massive. 1 second of a 1 minute cooldown isn't quite as impactful as you might expect. So again, proc rate is key, but this also gives you another supporting role. Not only do you shave some time off your own major, but you can get other players' essences off cooldown faster as well. Can you imagine if your entire raid was using their 3rd minor slot as this essence? Haste procs everywhere, essences always off cooldown. I really love the idea. Let's see how it works out in practice when 8.3 goes live. This essence comes from the new Horrific Vision scenario feature. Moving on, let's check out the healer essences. The first one we have is the Spirit of Preservation. 1 minute cooldown, channel a beam of energy onto an ally that heals them for about 160k over 2.6 seconds. Other allies in the beam are healed for about 7k every 0.5 seconds. Each time the primary target is healed, you gain a stack of Devout Spirit. Devout Spirit is the minor trait, so let's touch on that real quick. Every 5 seconds gains Saving Vigil, causing your next quick heal spell, so Flash Heal for priests, Flash of Light for paladins, etc., to heal for an additional 1.2k, stacking up to 5 times. Each stack of Saving Vigil consumed increases the crit strike chance of your next quick heal within 6 seconds by 20%. So, at max stacks, your quick heal will heal for about 6k extra, give or take, and then the next quick heal after that will be a guaranteed crit. Not too bad, though I don't think the numbers for this essence will really let it shine. The major power is also very situational and will require some good positioning. You can use this as a mini raid cooldown if everyone is stacked in the beam as it goes off, and the major effect can be useful to get some quick healing into a tank if they're falling a bit too fast, but when you compare this major with everything else on offer for the healers, I have a feeling it's going to come up a little short. If you don't use your quick heal super often, the minor power might not even be too useful either, so the numbers will make or break this essence as per usual. This essence comes from the new Reputation faction in the Vale of Eternal Blossoms. The other healing essence has a lot more potential. The Unwavering Ward has a 3 minute cooldown on the major essence, release 12 protective spears outward over 3.5 seconds, granting the first ally to touch it a barrier that absorbs damage for 10 seconds. Each time you send out a protective sphere, gain an absorb shield for 2% of your max health, and when an ally gains the absorb shield, you and that ally heal for some health as well. That's pretty awesome just from reading it. With 12 spheres being plopped out, you can give half the raid a mini bubble, and if you channel the entire thing, you'll get a shield for 24% of your max health. Definitely nothing to sniff at. If you stagger the allies getting the shields, you're also going to get quite a bit of healing over time from players grabbing the orbs. This is definitely a mini raid cooldown, and I can imagine it will see quite a lot of use. If multiple healers run this essence, you can spam bubbles for everyone, and all of your healers will get that extra bubble on top of everything else. Absorb shields shields are also generally quite powerful because you can use them before damage comes out. It's like increasing your health pool for some particularly nasty raid mechanics that you know are coming your way. Even though the major power seems cool and effective, the minor power is actually where this essence shines the most. Every 10 seconds, allies within 15 yards of you gain a shield that absorbs about 3k damage, stacking up to 15k. Targets protected by the shield take 3% reduced damage. Now this says allies and not party members. I figured it works for anyone in your raid group even if they aren't in the same party or 5-man section of the raid. I'm pretty sure that is the case. Nadara and I were in separate party groups of a raid, but we were still getting each other's shields. That answers the second question you probably have: can you get this shield from more than one healer at a time? Yes, you can. The essence also doesn't mention anything about a cap on players or a limit as to how many players can benefit from this at any given time, so I wouldn't be surprised if this spreads a bubble to everyone within 15 yards. If you take 4 healers to a fight and they all use this minor essence and everyone stands within 15 yards of each other, your entire raid could be getting a 12k damage bubble every 10 seconds, and if you don't take any damage that can stack up to a 60k bubble. And on top of that, you're all taking 3% reduced damage at the very least. If that 3% damage reduction stacks, you're looking at closer to 12% depending on how it decides to stack. That seems insane for a major essence, and if this doesn't change at all, I can guarantee this will always occupy a minor slot for any healer. It's passive healing, but it's also passive absorbs and damage reduction. There's a lot of benefits to running this essence. I wonder if we'll see any changes to it before 8.3 goes live. Now this essence comes from the Horrific Vision scenario as well. And then we have the new tanking essences. The Strength of the Warden has a 2-minute cooldown, taunt all nearby enemies, forcing them to attack you for 6 seconds, and increase your dodge chance by 15% for 6 seconds. Targets affected by this essence take 50% additional damage from you. An interesting control, mitigation, and DPS essence all rolled into one. I imagine this might become one of the best Mythic Plus essences for tanks that do a lot of AoE damage. Pull a bunch of mobs, pop this essence, deal a whole boatload of damage. You also don't have to worry about losing aggro for 6 seconds, and on top of all of that you get an extra bit of dodge to stay alive a bit longer. Not a bad deal. The minor power is all about self-sustain. Every 2 seconds store 3k healing up to a max of 59k. When you dodge or parry an attack, heal for all stored healing. The max health of all tank spec players in your raid or party is increased by 3% stacking. Healing when you parry or dodge is interesting. The more often you can avoid attacks, the more often you can tap into that stored healing. I wonder how that will work out in practice, but the 3% extra health is kind of nice. This essence comes from the Horrific Vision scenario as well. And the second tank essence is called the Touch of the Everlasting. Its major effect is a passive. Your next death is prevented, and you instead regenerate to 40% of your max health and take 85% reduced damage for 3 seconds. When your death is prevented, your largest cooldown is reset, so massive for demon hunters, shield wall for warriors, etc. This can't occur more than once every 10 minutes. Another free no death proc, with the added bonus of resetting your major cooldown. I guess that's not too bad, not all too exciting either though. The minor power is kind of more of the same. When you fall below 35% health, gain some avoidance for 15 seconds and your next active mitigation will last 50% longer. This can only occur every 1 minute. So if your health is spiking all over the place as a tank and you're not really sure whether you're going to die or not, or I guess you just don't trust your healers, this might be a good essence just for a bit of insurance and a bit more stability. Hopefully you aren't spiking all over the place though, so I think this essence won't really get picked up as often as some others, unless there's a boss which has a nasty habit of one-shotting you out of the blue. This essence comes from the new Reputation faction in the Vale of Eternal Blossoms. And then we have one more essence to look at. This is the general use essence that anyone can pick up. The Formless Void. 1.5 second cast, replicate the energy in your target's Heart of Azeroth, gaining access to rank 3 of their currently slotted major essence for the next 15 seconds. The Formless Void will go on cooldown for 30% longer than the base cooldown of the essence you replicated. Does not work on passive essences, so you can rotate between any essence that your group is currently using as long as it's not a passive essence. It also seems to copy the minor power of the essence you copy, which could lead to all sorts of crazy shenanigans. But this means you can have some wildcard players who can use almost any essence they want. It also means you can use any role's essences if you really want to. Both tanks could copy the bubble essence from a healer and have a crazy bubble party without needing the extra healers. The healers could go full whammy DPS mode and copy Azerite lasers, rock boys, Breath of the Undying for that extra crazy healer execute damage. This kind of throws the doors wide open on what essences you can pick and choose. The only downside is that whatever essence you do copy, you'll end up with a 30% longer cooldown on your major essence. That could mean waiting an extra minute on a 3-minute cooldown, which certainly isn't ideal. An interesting combination could be to use the Formless Void as a healer to copy the Spark of Inspiration from a DPS. The Spark is mainly a support essence as we talked about earlier, but you can only use it as a DPS spec. Being able to copy that as a healer and use the support essence from a support role is potentially quite powerful, especially when you consider that another DPS wouldn't have to give up their DPS essence major slot, yet you end up with the same result. The healer can just copy another healer's major essence if you really need the extra heals later on too. Being super flexible has the potential to be crazy powerful, but that does require a lot of teamwork. With healer DPS becoming more and more important on some close mythic progression kills, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw healers running the Endless Void to copy something like the Execute Essence just to try and push the last 20% as quickly as possible. The minor power for this essence could be very useful too. Each time any ally within 40 yards uses an Azerite essence, gain 439 of your primary stat and 90 haste for 20 seconds. The ally who used an Azerite essence also gains 90 haste for 20 seconds. I did check this quickly to see if the effect stacks or refreshes, and from my testing it looks like it refreshes. So you don't get 400 odd primary stat for each person that uses an Azerite essence, you'll only ever get one stack of this buff, but every time someone uses their essence you'll get reset back to 20 seconds on your timer. This could be up 100% of the time if you had a few players using low cooldown essences like Crucible of Fire or the Breath of the Undying, which makes me think this minor might get used a lot in conjunction with the Breath of the Undying essence. It's a nice passive DPS bonus for sure, so it's just a numbers game to decide whether it's actually worth taking. This essence comes from the new raid tier and will probably be collected in the same way as the Eternal Palace essence. You may notice that some of these essences say something about corruption. Unique. Corruption reduced by 10. We're not really sure what corruption does just yet, so we don't know what -10 does, but I assume it's related to the raid and some mechanics in there. It could also be related to the corrupted rings, but we'll probably have to wait for a future PTR build to actually explain what it means and where it's even used. Some of the essences also share an animation with essences we've had for a while now, so that might be Blizzard being lazy or they might not be finished. I know the animations were some of the final updates of the initial Heart of Azeroth essences that we saw in 8.2, so I hope to see some shiny new particle effects in future PTR builds as well. And that's it for the new Heart of Azeroth essences coming in patch 8.3. I think some of these will definitely see a lot of use, and depending on whether that -10 corruption thing is super beneficial, I guess we'll be forced into using some of the minor powers for some types of content anyway. I still love the idea behind the Spark of Inspiration, and I hope we get to play around with it a bit in raids and it actually be worthwhile. And then the Formless Void is another really unique option for an essence. I'm very happy they're coming up with new fun effects for the essence feature. I'm not looking forward to farming them on multiple characters though. We haven't heard anything about changes to the way we unlock essences or anything about account-wide unlocks and progress, but we're still kind of early in the PTR cycle, so if that's something you're interested in, keep your fingers crossed. What do you think of the new essences from what you've seen so far? Do any of them stick out as super awesome, mega useful and will always be taken no matter what? Or do some of them seem a little lackluster when compared to the essences we already have? Can you think of any crazy combinations for the Formless Void essence? I'm sure some of you had some out-of-the-box ideas. Leave all your thoughts in the comments section below. A big thank you to all of our supporters over on Patreon. You can see their names floating by on screen. If you want to join these lovely guys and gals, you can find a link in the description below. Remember to leave a like just below the video before you leave. If you want to see more, make sure to subscribe. But apart from that, thanks for watching folks, good luck and have fun, and as always, I'll see you next time.